Look, I need you watching our backs. You're a better shot than I am.
Huh, really?
No?
Hello there, Seraphim17 once again. This is my Gears of War 4 Insane Difficulty video walkthrough. This is Act 4, Chapter 1, and it is called Get Out. So, judging from the last video, you now know that we've been reunited with an old friend, and we're going to be moving through this new threat to hopefully get back to the surface. Gears is a series where oftentimes in the campaigns you will find yourself underground and have to find your way to the surface. So the concept of getting back above ground is not new, but the tasks in which they have us participating in this particular one is new. And there's a couple of pretty tough firefights coming up, so there's something to keep you entertained, but there's nothing that's quite as egregious as some of those ones on Act 3, which I felt were pretty damn challenging. So, par for the course, I'm going to be wandering around, trying to find grenade caches, trying to find weapons that they might have stashed away. Every so often you'll see me pick up the odd collectible, because there's quite a lot of them in the game, and every time I read them, they didn't tell you anything interesting, and that's a little bit of a pet peeve for me, on a whole bunch of levels, but the majority one is, if you're going to take the time to hide something, make sure it's worth reading, because to me it should do the storytelling, or it should do the extra filling out of the world to an extent where you want to find them. And every time I found a piece of collectible in this, it was something that had very few lines on it, and the lines were always something very technical, like the jargon of some kind of job or industry that I didn't understand. And I don't know, maybe once you get all of them, it forms a larger picture and it becomes a bit more understandable, but I just didn't really feel it. And this is me double checking that you cannot get out of this room, because you'll notice once you drop down it's a little bit too tall to mantle back up, which is a intentional design to make this next fight a little bit more tricky. So the first thing you'll see is the loader, which in this game is really, really powerful, and I'm a big fan of it, and I was hoping to be able to use it for quite some time, because it's essentially a free pass. Whenever you see a loader, it means that you don't have to worry about the difficulty. And here we come. A bunch of juvies spawn off that back wall and start assailing the team. You hear Kate mentioning that they're here, and all I'm going to do is wait for them to come, and then I'm going to step on them with the loader. You can sprint if you want to, and you can put them down that way, but it's a little one of those defense moments. I can't help but noticing as well, there's 4 of us in a game that doesn't have 4-player online co-op. What a strange choice that was. Do you think they'll patch it in later, out of guilt? I would hope so. But I don't know. This game doesn't have arcade mode. Do you think they'll patch that in later? Do you think they'll sell that to us later? I don't get it. There's all those fancy ribbons, all those cool things. Why not have a great scoring mode for your campaign? Gears was all about the campaign. Didn't have a multiplayer until very late in the cycle for Gears 1. The multiplayer was an afterthought, and it was also incredibly rushed, which is one of the reasons why it's so goddamn amazing, because sometimes, necessity and strict circumstance make for the best results. And when you have too long to tweak and adjust and mess around, you don't get the same results. You don't get that lightning striking twice, and I love that. That is a elite drone who's got a torque bow, and he can't do a thing. Look at this, it's so ridiculously powerful. This loader is probably the strongest vehicle in the game, and if you've beat the game, that won't make a lot of sense to you, because there's a really intense and impressive looking machine later on. It ain't as good as the loader, just objectively. But this is of course a Snatcher, and the reason that this is tough is not only do the Snatchers take a massive amount of damage, but there's also juvies that are going to be attacking us too. That noise right there, the little predator rattle, it means it's having its tail above its head, and it's readying a quill. And because it fires the sniper quill, it is a one-shot kill if it touches you. You do not want that to happen. But the strategy if you're playing with a human for this particular enemy is very simple, because you can just chain the ability for it to carry people away. But when it's the AI doesn't go down so quick, so they put up a bit of a fight. But the main strategy is to know against the Snatchers. When you're at mid-range to close, it can spray fire that has an incredible cone of effect in front of the boss. If you're close to him, he'll stamp on the ground, which does have a decent radius, but it's not as ridiculous as you would think. That's an instant kill. And at range, it will fire the quills at you, which do not miss unless you put something between you and them, and instantly murder you too. So this is a creature that has a lot of tools, but I say a lot of tools. It has a minimum amount of tools that all do incredible things for it. so don't even test it, you know. It can also move surprisingly quick considering its size, but as long as it downs somebody and it starts carrying them, all you have to do is stop it, and as long as you're not close to it, you are in absolutely no danger. The pathfinding on this particular enemy can sometimes make it so that it moves close to you, but if you see yourself getting close, you're going to get breathed on, so you need to move out of the way of the fire. And you can definitely toe the line if you know what to look for, but it's something that's going to come through fighting this creature. And you fight it a few times in the campaign, so I'm hoping that you're going to have a good understanding. As Marcus blocks a few bullets there, and here comes the Quill Sniper. Look at it. You know, it looked like he might have been shooting at Marcus, but he was shooting at me. And I've tried to wait till the last possible moment and roll dodge that, and it still hit me, so I think that the tracking on it is a little bit too god tier. No doubt you might be able to do it if you get incredibly lucky. We're talking, you know, microseconds. I would say nanoseconds, but I don't think that's realistic. Because aren't they so fast that you can't even conceive the thought or have the neuron fire in time for it to become an action? But you get what I mean. But up here, you can still get breathed on, so don't think that you're safe just because you're up on an altered tier. And always try and attack him from a side when he's not focused on you. Be aware that the enemies have a tendency of not necessarily boomer turning, but they'll start an attack facing somebody else, and occasionally they'll find you the most delicious and they'll hit you. But I chuck a grenade here, and I think this puts an end to the boss. Yeah, there it goes. A couple more hammer burst shots, and he starts bursting. They're an interesting choice. And, of course, there is a nest that spawns. Oh, no? Was the loader falling? Oh, that's good then. I thought it was more enemies. That would have sucked. But there you go, guys. A fight has ended. You can feel a little bit better knowing that you passed a pretty tricky one. And then we can push onwards now and get on with the rest of the game. Because we are in Act 4. Act 4 is the final act before the final act, you know? It's always that feeling of knowing that you're very close to the resolution, but the resolution is still to come. And I've always liked Act 4 in Gears, because it seems to be one of the standout zones in the games. In this particular one, I don't think it stands out as much, because I just don't think you do anything that's new, specific, or interesting enough to warrant it to stand out too much. But in this game, I think it'll stand out for the wrong reasons, because there's a very incredibly difficult boss coming up. That was cool too. I used the drop shot to seal the hole, which is just like old school Gears, guys. You can do it with boom shots, torque bows, you can do it with the new weapons too if they're explosive. There's a couple of the grubs have made it out, which we'll have to contend with. And because there's this kind of curving cover system here, it makes it difficult to move towards where they are, because we're on the right hand side of the room, and the right hand side in Gears is the position of weakness. You know, it's you walking into the power hand like Michael Bisping does against Dan Henderson, and you do not want that, because you don't take away any of the power or the speed, you just take it, and that is a bad night for anybody. But we've got decent range here, and there's a couple of... I'm going to call them Therons just because they're using torque bows, even though technically that's not true. This guy wants me, it seems, but the team helps me out. And my advice for rushing Locust is to put some space between you and put them down, because if you don't, they will not hesitate. There goes a quick torque down by him, which is kind of funny. I'm so happy that your team can't die from torque bows, because that was not the case in previous Gears games. They could get sprayed and it was just an instant fail. Same with grenades, same with Hammer of Dawn. There were instances where they could completely die, and there's a part of me that wants the team to be vulnerable, but there's also a part of me that doesn't want to blame them when I die. And there's nothing worse than feeling like you did nothing wrong. And some people feel like they did nothing wrong the entire time, which can make for an interesting lack of contrast. It makes me wonder, do they think they do everything right all the time? Because if so, how do you improve then? And I don't really understand that mentality. So we've got a couple more dudes left to strip down as we move out of this evil, awful place. A couple of juvies turning up, covered in juice, and getting a nice quick left hook like Clubber Lang. Put him down with some hipfire, get that life back, get out of the way of the torques. That's what I was doing then, guys. If it looked like I was not moving the most optimized, it's because I was panicking. I've got real good memories of bad times with torque bows, and they weren't at the hands of humans, unfortunately, because humans generally aren't very good with the torque bow, which is nice. Some are, though. You know, some will definitely teach you how to use it. Like those people that roll to fire it. Can you remember those guys? Those were a fun way. Get somebody to chase you, start charging it, and then roll backwards, and you ended up shooting them as they rushed in. That was a good feeling. And make sure you pick up that torque bow too, because the torque bow is incredibly useful. The boss that's coming up at the end of this level is incredibly susceptible to torque rounds. I've already mentioned a little bit about him, but the boom shot just doesn't do the justice for me. I think the boom shot in this game is kind of shit. The room gives you a lot of powerful weapons like long shots and mulchers and things, but the torque bow is the weapon I recommend you get 12 of and you make all 12 count. Because if you make all 12 count, you will never need another weapon. That's powerful. You're not going to see that from my video, unfortunately, because my run isn't that clean, but I can definitely tell you that the torque bow is the difference between losing and failing, I believe. And the only real difficulty of it is not getting in a bad situation with the juvies and the extra swarm, because all the boss does is shoot at you with machine guns that do a lot of damage but not enough to murder you all that quickly, and then everybody else is there to flush you out of cover, and they constantly do that, and that's why it's difficult, because you're always having to attest for people pushing on you, and your NPCs aren't very clever, so they just get you fucked and they put you in bad spots and they get into fights with people, and it goes bad really quick. And that's the only reason it's tricky. Oh, that and the fact that the boss has an incredible amount of damage to take. He takes a beating for some reason. It's just Gears 101. They like to give bosses a lot of life. You know, anybody who's beat Queen Mira is not going to be surprised by how much the Swarmak takes, which it's just par for the course of the Gears campaign, it seems. But I'm using the Hammer Burst at the moment, and I do like the Hammer Burst in this game. It's just got that nice amount of recoil to make it feel skillful without feeling awkward, and I appreciate that. Also, I am also appreciative of the Locusts staying just in the right amount of cover so that I can down them without them being much of a threat. I think I thought that, there we go, there was a weapon that I dropped, wasn't there, so I could use this. And there it is, pick up the torque bow, move forward. 2 power weapons. Ooh, this is a mistake. I shouldn't have done that. I should have put the snub back on. But unfortunately, once you start charging the torque bow, I do not believe you can cancel it. And if you can, it's a new mechanic, and I didn't learn it. So, that's the good thing about the M-Bar sniper rifle. It enables you to have kind of one of those false starts and then recover from it, which I think is really nice. But push forward. There's a lance that you can pick up should you need it. Here's me carrying an active instead. Instead of using the reload, I put the pistol on after cancelling both reloads, and I'm going to hopefully use this to deal some good damage. So back into the room that I think we've been through once before, and it's probably going to kick off because they've put a discombobulator, which is my way of saying the buzzkill. And yes, there is. This is a snatcher that is backed up with, it might be a scion and some swarm, or it might just be the snatcher, but to say the least, that boss takes a beating. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move backwards to trigger the fight, and then I'm going to sprint all the way back to this cart, and I'm going to hit it as many times as I can with the circular saws. This is in the spirit of good old Isaac Clarke, so hit it with everything you've got from this range. This weapon is kind of cool because not only is it affected by wind, but it's also affected by what it hits, so you can do some interesting bounce shots. I wish it was more portable and it had less ammo, because I would like to use it more frequently in multiplayer, because I reckon you're going to be able to do some really interesting moves by bouncing them off walls, bouncing them off ceilings. You know, if you know someone's in cover and they won't come out and everybody's waiting to go in, if there's a doorway and they're hogging the doorway, bounce it off that back wall, come back on itself like you're playing pool, and take them out that way. That could be really cool. By the way, guys, if you stand in the fire and you notice your cog starts going up, you have to relocate. There's no two words about it. If you stay there, you will die. And the game is fair, so that it gives you the amount of time needed to get out of the fire, but you need to be aware, if you move out of cover in Gears, you can be very, vulnerable to taking a hit like just then. But you're now going to get swarmed by the swarm, get it? And I'm just going to use the torque bow, because I don't know for sure if I'm going to be needing it too soon, because in the fight that comes up at the end of this chapter, there is going to be torque bow refills in that zone, so you don't necessarily need to take much ammo there, but I would recommend you take as much as you can, because it's going to make it much easier. But this fight is fun. I can't really see how many people there is here, but I'm not doing the best job with my torque bow. I wish I was, but I'm not. This is kind of like how it works in the multiplayer, where you try and get a couple of openings and you miss them and you waste a few, and you always regret it, but it's how it works. I'm one of those players who I would rather be liberal with the torque bow than be too restrictive with it, because I don't want to have ammo unused at the end. I would rather have an empty torque bow, then a talk-bow filled with lingering regrets as I get... Wow, I thought he was rushing me then, that's scary. Another thing too, when you charge the talk-bow and you're trying to aim it, it can be really difficult to get your shot off, because not only are you getting shot and getting close to death, but you're getting view kicked, and it makes it tough to land those shots. Of course, it's not impossible, it's just a bit of a nightmare. I wanted to go back and pick up the hammer burst, that's what I'm doing here, guys, if you're wondering. I don't have a lot of ammunition. I've had to be a little cavalier with my explosives, and it's left me with nothing. And it's one of the issues that I had throughout recording this, actually. There are moments where you just don't have the tools for the job, and finding them can be tricky, which is, I think, why they've implemented the swapping weapons with your team mechanic. Because I think it was in Gears 3, but I never remember using it. Because in that game, I think you could give them boom shots and they became kill squads, which is a great strategy, but at the end of the day, when you're doing that, it doesn't even feel like you're playing the game. And I would do it for a boss, and I wouldn't feel bad, but for just the game, I always feel like those shooting squads are a little overkill. And if I'm making a walkthrough, there's a chance that I would use that for the sheer fact that it is the best way to play. But there's always the part of me that's kind of like, well, you know, it's a bit cheesy. I kind of want to show people how you deal with these situations without the god weapon. But sometimes the god weapon is the best choice, you know, it's weird how strategies evolve and how playstyles evolve. Like, if you'd have talked to me about Bioshock back when it came out, the concept of not upgrading the HP in that game would never have occurred. I would have called you crazy. But nowadays, it's just not something I think that's that important, because I'm looking for, you know, that challenge. I'm looking to be punished, and that's how that works. So it's funny how you change when you play a lot of games. But that's the scream of a Scion, guys, which means... Oh no? What was that? Yeah, the audio in this game really confuses me. It sounded like a big guy, but there is no big guy, and there's no enemies at all, so the scream was perhaps a latent trigger that we didn't trigger. Interesting. I don't know what that is, folks, but the good news is that I don't need to know either, because we've won, and we're safe now, hopefully, and I'm hoping we'll get a checkpoint before I do something dumb. Sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't. I remember getting back through this pump station, or this, whatever this, like, rocking place is, this quarry of types, this weird grave for the locusts, because there's going to be a couple of juvies that decide to show up, and I remember those fellas, because they surprised me, and it's just on the corner of one of the rooms that you've been through, and you'll remember this room from coming through it the first time, so there's nothing in here again, and I always have an interesting reaction to empty rooms. Like, some people will look at them and think, what's the point of it if there's nothing in it? I just look at it as detail, I always have. And games have changed their emphasis on detail over time. Like, can you remember on the PS2, where one of the big things that games focused on was the idea of the physics of destruction? So you would have a lot of things put in the environment just for the sake of the player being able to shoot them so that they could display the new tech. And it was a big thing. It was a really big thing at the time, these superfluous details that added nice touches, but in no way affected absolutely anything, because they were just a sundry that looked nice. They were like having good water technology in a game that's set inland, you know. Unless it's raining, or you flood an area with some kind of mechanic or valve or something, you're not going to see the water, are you? So they will give you almost any excuse to flood areas or make water run, because the tech is so nice. And I don't blame them for that, because I think that's what you should do if you create something awesome. But when I come across an empty room, my first thought is sometimes it's an enemy spawner, it's some kind of enemy closet, but mostly it's just they're adding the detail that they didn't have the memory to have back in the day, so they couldn't have rooms that had no purpose. Every room had to have a purpose. And what this did is it gave this idea to the player that every room has a purpose, so they would waste time in these rooms thinking there was something there when there wasn't. And it took a while for us to get to this place where we can have extra rooms that do nothing but add to the atmosphere and add to the world itself, because now hopefully that's what we think about them. And personally, I still want them to have a utility and a function. I want them to have something there that makes them warranted, like some ammunition under the bed, or maybe a sneaky secret door behind a bookcase or something, or, you know, you inwardly fold a bust and you press a button and you do fun things. That would be awesome, but you don't need to, because sometimes the contrast of nothing makes something feel sweeter, and you need that in games. Speaking of this, look at this! A kinda novelty on rails section, where you're just shooting an infinite ammo snub while streaking upwards and it looks really fancy. Kind of sucks that it's in 30 frames per second, so it'll look way better on PC, but it's nice to have that little flourish at the end. So thank you for watching, guys, and you take care now.